I still don't know what was in the bottle. I never called anyone. The only person I told was my husband, and he gaslighted me into thinking I'd worked myself up over nothing, that it was just the wine. I don't know who's right or wrong. I'm a business consultant. I'm the woman in heels and a skirt walking into rooms that are mostly men in suits who've already decided what I am before I've opened my mouth, and I've spent a career making them change their minds by the end of the meeting. That year, I was doing a systems rollout for a firm, 10 working days spread across 2 weeks, and the company put me up in a hotel about 20 minutes out from their office. I don't drive in cities I don't know. So the first morning I booked an Uber, and the driver who showed up was a man named Simon. He was easy. Talked when I wanted to talk, quiet when I had calls to make. He had cold bottles of water in the back seat, the little half-liter ones, and he told me to help myself. I remember thinking that was a nice touch. Most drivers don't bother. At the end of that first ride, he said, if I needed someone reliable while I was in town, he did private bookings off the app, cash, and he was cheaper than surge pricing in the mornings. I'd be making the same trip twice a day, every working day for 2 weeks. It made sense. I took his number. So that was the arrangement. He picked me up outside the hotel at 7:40 every morning, and he was there again at 6 when I came out of the office. Same car, same bottles in the back. I had my mornings and evenings sorted, and by the end of that first week, I wasn't booking anyone else. The wrong thing, the first one, was so small I didn't even hold on to it at the time. It was the 3rd or 4th morning. I got in, and before I'd said a word about where we were going, Simon pulled out and made the turn toward the office. I hadn't told him the address since that first ride. I figured he just remembered it, the way you'd remember a regular. But it wasn't only the address. He knew I stopped for coffee on the Tuesday because I'd had an early call. That Thursday, he had the car warm and a coffee already in the cup holder, the same order, waiting for me at 7:40. I said something about him being a mind reader. He smiled and said he pays attention to the people he drives. I took that as a compliment. A man being attentive read to me as a man being good at his job. By then, I'd stopped thinking of him as a stranger. He knew which firm I was at, that I was only in town for the 2 weeks, that my husband was back home and hadn't come with me. I don't remember telling him most of it. You talk on a 20-minute drive twice a day, and things come out, and you don't keep a record of what you've given away. There was water every time. Morning, a cold bottle in the seat pocket. Evening, another one. Fresh, like he'd stocked the car just before he came for me. I got so used to it I stopped noticing it was there. Then there was where he parked. He wasn't always in the same spot when he came for me in the evenings. One night he was further down, past the corner, and when I mentioned it, he said the usual place had someone in it. Another night he was around the side and said he'd have caught a ticket where he normally sat. There was always a reason, and each reason was perfectly ordinary on its own. It took me until much later to notice the spots had one thing in common. They were the ones the office cameras didn't reach. I got in anyway. Every time. The second week was when he started talking about after. Not in a strange way. He asked when I was flying out and I told him, the Saturday, the late afternoon flight. He nodded and said he'd take me to the airport. No charge, since I'd been such good business. I said that was kind. Then a day later, he brought it up again. The flight time, the terminal, checking he had it right. I didn't think anything of it. People confirm things. If anything, that second week I trusted him more, not less. He'd been early every single morning. The car was always warm, the coffee was right, the water was there. I'd stopped checking my phone for the pickup because I didn't need to. He was just outside every time before I was. One evening he was already there at 5:30 before I'd texted. He said he'd finished a fare nearby and thought he'd wait rather than drive back out. I remember being glad. It had been a long day, and the car was right there, and I didn't have to stand on the street looking for it. He remembered things I'd only said once, that I didn't like the radio on in the mornings, so it was always off. That I took calls on the ride home, so he wouldn't talk until I was done. Every small thing about those trips he'd already handled before I got in. That was the thing I appreciated most, I think, how little I had to worry about. In a city I didn't know, on my own, there was one part of every day I never had to think about. I had it handled. I'd found the one reliable thing. By that Friday, he was the most normal part of my whole trip. Friday was work drinks. My idea, actually. The team had been good to me, and I wanted to buy a round before I left. I texted Simon and told him I'd need a later pickup, maybe 10 instead of 6. He said no problem, he'd be there. I had 3 or 4 drinks over the evening. I was maybe more than tipsy. I'm not a big drinker, so it doesn't take much with me. He was outside at 10 exactly. I got in the back and he pulled out and asked if I'd had fun. I told him I was looking forward to going home, that it had been a good night, that I'd had fun. The bottle was in the seat pocket where it always was. I was warm from the bar, and the heater was on, and I was thirsty. I opened it and had a mouthful before I'd really registered the cap. It was already open. The seal was broken. I felt the loose ring turn under my thumb after I'd already swallowed, and I sat there with the taste in my mouth. It just tasted wrong. I couldn't put a finger on it. Bitter underneath, something the water didn't cover. That tastes bad, I thought, and I nearly said it out loud, but I didn't. He'd been such a star running out to the bar for me at 10 at night. I didn't want to make a thing of it over a bottle of water. I put the cap back on and sat with it. Maybe 5 minutes went by. Then it started coming up on me. Heavy, from behind the eyes, my arms going far away. Something pushing me down from the inside. Simon's eyes kept coming back to the mirror. "You can sleep if you want." I didn't answer him. I put my hand on the middle seat beside me to steady myself, and I counted the streetlights going past, so there was something to hold. I've never been able to sleep in a car. Not as a kid, not on coaches, not once. And I was not going to start in the back of that one. He said it again, softer. That I looked tired. That it was fine. He knew the way. I could close my eyes, and he'd wake me at the hotel. I kept noticing him looking at me. We weren't really talking anymore, and every time I found his eyes in the mirror, they were already on me, almost staring, coming back again and again to check. So I didn't close them. I kept my eyes on the streetlights and answered him every time he spoke, short and awake, so he'd know I was still there. I said I was fine, just needed my bed. I asked him something about the route so he'd have to think about driving. The hotel took 11 minutes. I know, because I watched the clock on the dash the whole way and made myself read the number every time it changed. When he pulled up, I had my hand on the handle before the car stopped. I said thanks, same as any other night, and I got the door open and I got my legs under me on the pavement. I heard him say something about the morning. I didn't turn around. The lobby doors, the light inside, the desk. I don't remember crossing the car park. I remember the concierge behind the desk asking if I was all right, his face turning to follow me as I went past, and me barely getting a word back to him before I was in the lift. My flight was late afternoon Saturday, so I had the morning, and I spent all of it in bed. Not real sleep. I'd surface and go back under, my mouth dry in a way water didn't fix, and even a baraka didn't touch the headache. I thought I'd been spiked. I still think it. But thinking it and knowing it are different things, and I have never been able to close that gap. Simon had offered to run me to the airport, free, that Saturday, because I'd been good business. I'd said yes days earlier, and never thought about it again. I went down to the desk and asked them to call me a cab. I didn't text him to cancel until I was already in it. I said my plans had changed, thanked him, and wished him well. He wrote back within a minute, asking if I was okay, if I'd got home all right, whether I'd need him in the morning. I didn't answer. I blocked the number at the gate. The concierge caught me on my way out. He asked if I'd recovered, and I must have looked blank, because he said it plainly then, that I'd come in Friday night looking wasted, that he'd nearly called someone, that he'd watched me get in the lift to be sure I made it. He'd thought I was drunk. I let him think it. I told my husband a version of it, a driver I'd been using, a weird feeling that maybe something had been in a drink. He said I'd been out with work and I'd had a few. That strange cities do that to you. He wasn't unkind. He just had an easy answer, and the easy answer let us both put it down. I never called the police. What would I have said? That I had a taste I couldn't describe, a headache, and a bottle I'd left in the footwell of his car. I use a refillable bottle now. I fill it myself and keep it with me, and I tell people it's better for the planet. And that's true, and it isn't the reason. He's still driving. Some woman got in his car tonight, new in town, glad someone reliable was waiting. There'll have been a cold bottle in the seat pocket, and she'll have thought, like I did, that it was a nice touch.